I would like to call to order the April 2026 meeting of the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board. If you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any changes to the agenda?
No, Chairman, there are not.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And incidentally, Narkey will be the voting member tonight because Kristen is absent. Any changes or comments on the minutes from last meeting?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
A second? Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. So we can jump right into comprehensive transportation plan update. All right, that's great.
All right, so I'm told so the screen here is black. That is all that I can see during this presentation. That's fine because I have notes, but we'll see how we get through it. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. Brett Martin here, Transportation Project Manager with the town. Also joining me tonight are Allison Flewitt and Will Anderson from Kimley Horn, which is the town's consultant for the Comprehensive Transportation Plan update. For tonight's item on the Comprehensive Transportation Plan update, we're going to catch you up on the work town staff and our consultant have done since we last came to you on this item back in November, when we provided an overview of progress to date on the CTP update since it kicked off last summer, which included, at the time, background on the purpose of the CTP and steps that have been scoped to carry out the update, how the public and other groups have been and will be engaged throughout the plan update process, results from the first round of engagement carried out last October, a review of existing conditions relevant to the town's transportation landscape, which we refer to as the state of the town, the CTP's draft guiding principles, and next steps for the update process. And we will go, still have to drive here. Oops. Okay. So following that touch point with the board, town staff, and Kimley Horn, I've worked with the town's interdepartmental staff level technical team to develop updated proposed cross-section concepts for the town's roadways, a universe of potential projects across all modes to be considered for prioritization and inclusion in the CTP, an evaluation framework that lays out the criteria for prioritizing potential projects, and how the town is engaging the public and provide to the public to provide input on and inform those deliverables. This is what we will cover with the board tonight as reflected on our agenda. And now I will turn it over to Kimley Horn to take us through the first two sections of this, and I will be back with you in a bit. And I will also ask that any questions be held to the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. Happy to be back and talking with you all about where we are on the planning process. So Brett gave you a quick update on some of the things that we've done to kind of kick off the CTP and get us to this point. But it's always helpful to have just a quick refresher of what it is that we're talking about. So just wanted to remind you all, with our comprehensive transportation plan, really what we're talking about with this document is our visionary document. This helps us understand where we're going, what is important to us from a transportation perspective within the town. We're establishing our needs, identifying those deficiencies within the document, and this helps us move to that next level of actually identifying a series of projects and strategies on into an action plan for implementation of how to move forward with those projects and strategies. And primarily, this is a communication and information tool for you all as well, so that you can communicate with your regional planning partners at Campo, you can communicate with NCDOT, you can communicate with the citizens and residents here in the town. So you already heard a little bit about our planning process from Brett. But just to highlight where we are right now, we've already gone through our existing conditions and visioning where we got some of those guiding principles and learned a little bit more about some of the data surrounding our existing conditions within the town now. We moved into our multimodal recommendations development. That's really where we started to dive into identifying those deficiencies and beginning that identification of needs. And you're actually going to hear more today, as Brett said, about our universe of projects, which is really the manifestation of that needs assessment. And that's bringing us into the action plan and documentation phase where we find ourselves right now. And this is a place where we kind of bring everything together. We start to look at that full universe of projects that has been identified, as well as what those may actually look like. You'll be hearing a little bit from us about cross sections and beginning that conversation, and then also the project prioritization process, because this is where we start to identify how we might want to express those needs in terms of importance going forward. So from here, I'm going to turn things over to Will to talk to us more about our roadway cross sections.
Yes, so a key aspect of the CTP update is updating all of the cross sections. And before we get into these updates, just a brief refresher on what the purpose of the cross sections are. Mainly, we kind of have these as a way to clarify what each street in Morrisville is going to do and what the purpose is. And this is kind of a reason to justify any improvements to safety, accessibility, and kind of help the town with their goals and interests with transportation moving forward. And it's kind of a key way to kind of set the guidelines and set a clear explanation to developers about what is expected on each street. Yes. Another key aspect of the cross sections is that we build upon the guidance provided by NCDOT. As many roads are owned by DOT throughout the town, it's important to make sure that everything is in correspondence with what they put forward. This can include various aspects of the roadway, including lane widths, bike ped elements, and other aspects such as medians, median crossovers, and street trees. So kind of a key thing was to make sure that we are building any recommendations or changes from the existing cross sections with the guidance from DOT. Moving from the baseline guidance from DOT, we then met with the technical team. This includes various experts from multiple departments, including planning, engineering, Parks and Rec, the police, communication, and public works. Kind of working closely with this team, we then refined and came up with various kind of guiding points for how we're going to modify the cross sections moving forward. And some of the key takeaways from these meetings are that the town of Morrisville needs more prescription with each of their cross sections. The current ones kind of have a layer of flexibility, which made it confusing for developers to understand exactly what they needed to do. So as a result, we kind of expanded the universe of potential cross sections to allow for kind of more precision on each road. Another key change is the removal of wide outside lanes and sharrows. This is kind of to align with our goals of making our bike and ped facilities better for all users, all ages and abilities. We also, kind of a key aspect is that all of these changes are coordinated with the actual recommendations that are being put forward in the universe of projects, which Brett will touch on in a little bit. But overall, kind of the key thing is that these are more precise and they allow for more emphasis on bike ped as well as safety and connectivity, which are kind of the key ideas that have been put forward that we've heard from the public as well as from the experts at the town. And just before we transition, this is a kind of a little example of what an example of a cross-section with more prescription could be and the changes. This is not indicative of all the cross-sections. So all 4-lane median divided will not just be like this one. This is just one example. But as you can see, the sidewalks have been widened as well as the introduction of a bike lane. And this is to replace that shallow wide outside lane, as well as making the outside lane a little more narrow, as well as kind of defining what the exact right-of-way is instead of giving that flexibility that was causing issues in the past. And I'll now pass it off to Brett to talk about the university projects.
All right, thank you, Will. Brett here again with you. I will now jump into the potential project concepts to be considered for prioritization and inclusion in the CTP. And to provide some more context regarding how the project concepts were developed, we first looked at the projects in the town's existing adopted CTP that have not been completed and carried those forward for consideration. We then looked at a wide range of plans, studies, and project programming documents that have been completed at the MPO level or by the town since the adoption of our existing CTP in 2019 to determine if there are any additional project concepts or recommendations we should include. We then looked at the results of our needs and gaps analysis identified through an evaluation of existing conditions and how the town's transportation network is currently performing, as well as general feedback received from the public and stakeholders last fall. We also added some new draft concepts for consideration that were identified by the staff level technical team. And with respect to project concept development, we are now at a point at which we are inviting any additional project concepts from you, the public, and other stakeholders, and working to get feedback from the same on those we have already identified. And just want to note, we did go to the town council earlier this week, 2 days ago on Tuesday, and provided the same information, same general presentation, and received feedback from them. And we will talk a little bit more about that a little later. All right, so I'm gonna go through these potential projects by mode, and I will note that there are a total of, there's a total of 146 project concepts across all the modes. You probably noticed that in your packet. And because there are so many, our focus tonight is to bring attention to the project concepts that differ or would be in addition to those identified in the existing adopted CTP. So in your packets, you do have modal maps and a key for all potential CTP projects. They were included, all of them were included in your agenda, but in the next few slides, I'm just going to hit on those additions or those that differ from what's in the existing CTP. All right, so jumping right into it here with roadway and intersection project concepts. At the top of the slide, you'll see for each of these that I go through, for each mode, plans, studies, programming documents that we derived these projects from. So I'm not going to go through all of those on each slide, and I'm just really going to go on down and focus on the projects. So for this mode, or these modes, roadway, intersection, we added the concept of a center turn lane along Church Street to provide some operational improvement that would result from separating turning movements from through movements along that corridor. That corridor has experienced over time some operational challenges with a lot of land uses that require turning movements. And you know what happens when there's a lot of turning movements that have to happen and there's a lot of traffic that's coming through movements that are happening at the same time? Well, the through movements block, or the turning movements block the through movements, and it doesn't operate very well. So that's the idea behind that. We also included access management along NC 54 between Cary Parkway and Weston Parkway, which is sort of a carryover from the 2019 CTP. That section of roadway is already widened to the preferred number of lanes, but is still identified for improvement to a median divided cross section, and it's not there yet. So we just we don't need to increase capacity there, but we do need to manage access. We have also proposed a new location extension of Southport Drive from International Drive to McCrimmon Parkway to facilitate better east-west connectivity there in the eastern part of town. We proposed a connection between the previously planned Town Hall Drive extension up to Providence Place and the proposed non-access controlled extension of the North Carolina 885 tollway. On the slide, it says 147. I was 5 years behind, I guess. So it's 885 now. It used to be 147. But that's what I mean, is that's what that is. In previous iterations of the CTP, connecting the tollway extension directly to Town Hall Drive was not a preferred solution by the the town council because of the potential to funnel a significant amount of traffic down Town Hall Drive, which is a lower capacity residential neighborhood serving collector street, rather than Davis Drive, which is a higher capacity intermunicipal arterial. So instead, the final solution for the tollway extension in the 2019 CTP was to curve it to connect to Davis Drive and have Town Hall Drive link into Providence Place separately. The solution that we proposed here retains the connection of the tollway to Davis Drive at Little Drive and retains the extension of Town Hall Drive to Providence Place, but proposes a connector between them. Through the interdepartmental technical team for the CTP update, town staff devised this concept to facilitate better connectivity between the Providence Place and Shiloh areas for accessing the future Morrisville High School and existing Parkside Elementary School, and to facilitate more direct travel from northern neighborhoods and freeways to the future town center. Because of the history with various proposed build-outs of the street network in this area, we posed it as a question for town council for staff to understand its palatability to carry forward on Tuesday night. Staff, when we proposed it, we believed it would have significant impacts for the community and would mitigate some of the previous concerns by still connecting tollway extension through movements to Davis Drive. But we also understand, if there's a reluctance to support it, a connection there because of the concern of funneling traffic down Town Hall Drive. So at its meeting on Tuesday night, Town Council was not supportive of a connection from Town Hall Drive extension to the tollway extension. So I just wanted to share that. It's on your map here. It's something I wanted to talk about. They were not supportive of that connection. They were still supportive of the Town Hall Drive extension to Providence Place. Didn't really seem to be that supportive of the tollway extension altogether. That's fine. We'll kind of hone in on that as we go through the process. Not sure how much control we have over that because most of it's not in our jurisdiction. But we'll come back to that later in the process. And lastly, for roadways and intersections, we added all of the intersections that were identified for further study and potential improvement in the town's 2021 intersection improvement study. And one thing I'd like to note before I move on, that kind of also as a follow-up from the town council meeting on Tuesday, is the Morrisville Parkway improvements that you see there are, one thing that came to light is you see a number of improvements at intersections. It's probably, what you see there is probably not indicative enough or as well as it should be for what the improvements are that are proposed for Morrisville Parkway that we actually have 65% design plans for and we're moving forward to get funded. So we will follow up with a better characterization of what's going on there. Because there's a lot more than just what you see indicated on the map and then using the key to match up with what you see on the map. All right, so I know that was a lot for roadway and intersection. The other modes won't take as long, sorry. So moving on to potential on-road bicycle side path and greenway projects. We added a number of side paths to roadway sections not previously identified to have them, which are listed on the slide, and most of these coincide with the removal of outside lanes and sharrows to accommodate bicyclists that Will just talked about. However, for Everett Fields Road, Mason Farm Road, and the planned Markham Drive extension, they are proposed to provide better east-west connectivity for bicyclists and pedestrians in general. We also added bike lanes along Evans Road and Northwest Cary Parkway, which also goes hand in hand with the removal of outside lanes and sharrows, or to make our concepts more consistent with how things match up at the Morrisville-Cary border, as proposed in the town of Cary's bike plan currently under development. We added a grade-separated bike ped connection, or several grade-separated bike ped connections across the North Carolina Railroad at Kitts Creek, Providence Place, and Shiloh, and across the North Carolina 885 tollway at Kitts Creek. It was this body that inspired that, so I just want to make sure that you understand that your prior feedback made us think about that and we thought it was a great idea. We extended the Sawmill Creek Greenway northward through the town's planned TOD area to Shiloh Park and Barbie Road. We added a greenway connection from Slater Road to the future Triangle Bikeway and from Aviation Parkway to Crabtree Creek Greenway near HSNC. And we added a greenway connection from Church Street Park to the greenway network within Research Triangle Park. Moving on to sidewalk projects, there isn't really a lot to say for new sidewalk projects to be included in the CTP. However, it's important to note that the town will continue to require sidewalk or side path installation with new development or redevelopment for all roadway segments and for all roadway improvement projects. For the purposes of the CTP update, we are deferring to the town's adopted sidewalk prioritization program and criteria to determine where to focus sidewalk improvement resources. And moving on to public transit projects. So the 9 we just finished and the town council just accepted in February, the town's alternative transit study to map out next steps for the Morrisville Smart Shuttle, or if we, we also evaluated, should we be doing something else? Should we be doing a different service model than node-based microtransit? So one of the things that identified and recommended was 9 new Smart Shuttle node locations. And so those node locations were added to the universe of projects for public transit. However, I do want to note that there have been additional general node locations suggested by the town council that go beyond these, that will be considered through our node prioritization and improvement criteria, which is scheduled to go back to the council this summer. The result of that will ultimately determine how the CTP identifies future Smart Shuttle node locations. We added regional passenger rail service and a proposed transit transfer facility and train station in the TOD area because the town still wants passenger, we have intercity passenger rail passing through us, but the town does not have access to any intercity passenger rail or regional rail or commuter rail. The town still wants that, and we need to put it in the CTP if we want that. So there it is. And we added 4 proposed bus rapid transit routes from the Campo 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. One of those alignments is the Western Bus Rapid Transit extension from downtown Cary to Research Triangle Park, which will replace the existing Go Triangle Route 310. And that is a project with committed funding. All right, so before I turn it back over to Allison, I believe, is speaking next, to talk about our proposed and still under development project evaluation and prioritization framework. I'd like to provide a bit of background on its basis and what it is designed to do for us. So very simply, it will determine which projects are higher priorities than others, and it will be based on criteria we established that dovetail with overall mobility and community goals. The evaluation framework we have developed so far is informed by the CTP guiding principles, which we covered back in November. Feedback we've received from the public, stakeholders, town council, and the Planning and Zoning Board. Deficiencies identified from our evaluation of existing conditions. And if we want any hope of getting anything funded by external parties, also funding program criteria and corresponding areas of emphasis from NCDOT's project prioritization process known as SPOT, used to inform the statewide transportation improvement program, and the Campo locally administered projects program. The evaluation framework is designed to and should balance the interests of the town with those external funding parties to better position projects for funding opportunities. If we don't align with their criteria, we might have to pay for everything ourselves, and we don't want to do that. So what do these external funding parties care about? Well, they focus on addressing congestion, a project's benefit cost, safety, and proximity to activity centers through a regional lens, and not particularly a local municipality-specific lens, meaning they don't just draw lines at the borders of Morrisville and look at the benefits and compare it to other projects that might be in the hopper for them to consider funding. The project, when they look at a project, it's about what does it do for the region. Aside from these areas of focus, however, the town is going to be more interested in what is important locally, for which multimodal accommodation, safety, and connectivity have been identified as important evaluation factors that have risen to the top. So now I'm going to turn it over to Allison to walk through more of this evaluation framework starting point. And really, they'll close out most of the rest of the presentation as well. So, Allison.
Thanks, Brett. So Brett mentioned a couple of the funding programs that we want to make sure that we're very cognizant of as we start to go through our prioritization process. And I just wanted to highlight these a little bit more, give a little bit more background, because that'll help inform where we're headed as we put together our draft prioritization for the CTP. So we're going to start off with SPOT, which is the NCDOT overall prioritization process that the vast majority of our state and federally funded program or projects rather are moving through the SPOT process. So the first thing to think about is if you're identifying a particular project, what kind of project is it? Because there are actually three different categories within the SPOT program. We have statewide mobility, regional impact, and division needs. And we have 40% of the total funding of SPOT is actually going to those statewide level projects. And then we have 30% going to regional and the final 30% going to division. So when you're thinking about these, you can kind of think about them as those statewide projects are going to be I-40, it's going to be all of our interstates, major U.S. highways. Regional impact kind of takes us to the next level down. It's going to be those secondary U.S. highways and major NC routes. And then division needs everything else. So you can kind of see right off the bat, you start to calculate out the lane miles that might be associated with all of those different types of facilities. And then you look at the percentage of the funding that's allocated to them. Obviously, there are far more division level facilities out there across the state and here in the town than there are anything else. But that is a tiny, or I guess the smallest level of funding that's available. So yet another way to underscore that we need to be judicious with the way that we are prioritizing our projects. So thinking a little bit more about that scoring process, you can see the breakout here between statewide, regional, and division. But we play a very key role kind of working symbiotically between the town and Campo and NCDOT. So this is essentially an opportunity for us here in the CTP process to identify the projects that are of importance to us. We then coordinate with Campo through their MTP and say, hey, this is what we were thinking. Let's try to align that with what some of those regional priorities are that are going to percolate into the overall regional plan. And then start to move through that prioritization process, right? So as we do that, Campo is also looking at these SPOT scores. That's how they're also running through their prioritization process when they get to that MTP level. And then ultimately, as these things progress into being considered for more of the near-term funds, NCDOT is conducting their own review of the SPOT scoring. One thing I'll just note, when you think about statewide projects versus regional and division level projects, statewide is truly assessed at the statewide level. So this is a quantitative thing. The locals don't get a ton of input into what makes it to the top of the statewide priority list. But when you start to think about regional and division level projects, there are local input points assigned. These are assigned by Campo and NCDOT division offices. So this is yet another place that kind of underscores our collaboration and coordination between those groups. So what are we talking about when we talk about the prioritization here? Brett already highlighted some of the things that are of a major focus in SPOT, but you can see this is broken out between statewide, regional, and division, and we have mobility-centric projects and modernization-centric projects. A lot of similarities, they're not exactly the same, but you do see common prioritization criteria beginning to appear throughout all of these, focusing around things such as freight, safety, congestion, benefit cost, and then other items more specific to certain project types like economic competitiveness, lane widths, or accessibility and connectivity. So that's kind of thinking about these funding types that NCDOT is more at the forefront of. But we also have here in the Campo region the LAP funding. So this is essentially because we are in a region that is big enough that we get what are called direct attributable funds. So a portion of their state and federal funds come directly to the region instead of going through NCDOT. And so really what that does is that allows Campo to kind of set their own rubric for how they want to score those funds, be able to apportion those out. You all have gone through the LAP application process. This is something where you essentially identify projects, you submit those projects, they are scored, and then Campo is able to allocate out that money that is available. So it's important for us to pay attention to what is actually being looked at through the LAP scoring criteria as well. So just looking at that from the roadway scoring criteria perspective, you can see some similarities and some differences kind of embedded in here when compared to SPOT. You look at some of the more quantitative measures coming from highway effectiveness. Those include congestion, benefit cost, safety, and then you think about also local priority. That's essentially somewhat dictated by the population of the communities. I think Morrisville is only allowed to submit one roadway project each cycle. So basically, that would get all your local points. But also planning consistency and prior agency funding. So it's helpful for us to kind of keep all of these things in mind. So all of that background information leads us to this, which is our starting point for project evaluation and prioritization. And just want to orient you to the matrix that you're seeing on the screen. So up at the first row, you will see our prioritization criteria that have been established for the CTP. These are all kind of the more general categorical criteria that we have established. And in the row directly below them, we have identified how we are measuring each one of those criteria. So that's essentially the quantitative backup. It's the data-driven solution to help us arrive at that criteria. And then in the final rows below all of that, we wanted to have that crosswalk that helps you see how we are addressing some of the criteria that you see in SPOT or in LAP. And so all those X's kind of help us see where we have crossover between the SPOT scoring process and the LAP scoring process. There wouldn't be a great matrix if you didn't have asterisks in it, so I'll call your attention to the couple of X's that have asterisks next to them on bike ped effectiveness and transit effectiveness. Those are actually included in the LAP scoring criteria in the bike ped and transit modes. There are actually separate scoring for those two modes in LAP. So we did want to call those out because that does show kind of the way that we are accounting for those there. So I'll also call your attention to the one criteria that is not present in either SPOT or in LAP, and that is roadway connectivity. This came from a lot of different sources, actually. It came from conversations with you all, with council, members of the public, highlighting the fact that roadway connectivity is a significant issue, specifically here in the town of Morrisville. It's one of the unique challenges that we have because of our geography, because of our barriers, and other unique features. And so we felt that it was appropriate to include that as one of our prioritization criteria here, with the measure that's assigned to it being the directness of travel. Our next steps for prioritization, just real quick, this is ongoing, this process is ongoing right now. Obviously, we do want to confirm the projects that we're actually going to be evaluating with our prioritization process. And then feedback, we're gathering feedback from the public right now through our engagement activities that are underway that Will's about to talk to you about. We did speak with council about this earlier this week, and obviously touching base with you all today. And so this is kind of our main chance to gather all of this information. Once we have this, we're going to actually run everything through and score this, and we will look forward to bringing back what we've done in June to share that back with this group. So now I'm going to turn this over to Will.
Yes, so we are in the middle of our phase 3 of engagement. Before I get into what we are doing for this phase, I will give a brief recap on our previous 2 phases. In our first phase, this was a kind of a big touch point with the public. And in this phase, we had multiple different methods to kind of engage the public, including the online survey, as well as some pop-up events and a public workshop. All of these with the same goal in mind to kind of just identify areas throughout the community that the public would like to see improvements, as well as kind of set the foundational goals for this plan. We then took all of that information and moved into phase 2, which was more technical in nature. And in this phase, we kind of worked with the technical team significantly more to kind of develop both our draft cross sections and our draft universe of projects. And with all that, we then are here today and ready to share all of that with the town council, you all, and the public. And that is phase 3. So kind of in addition to showing all of these draft recommendations and parts of our plans, all of this is extremely important for fueling our prioritization process, as y'all's engagement is a key piece of that criteria. And kind of once we have that finished, we'll then finalize the prioritization process and prioritize all of the projects, and then come back to you all with the final plan, which we'll then open it up for more review, both to you all, to the public, and to the town council. And just to be specific about the events that we are holding in this phase, we have an online survey that is currently running and will end at the end of April. We also have 2 pop-up events. One occurred last Saturday and one is occurring this Saturday at Springfest, as well as a public workshop next Tuesday, and then multiple touch points with you all, the technical team, and town council. And just to give some background on the survey, it's all held through this public coordinate site, which allows us to include interactive maps so that the public can kind of zoom in and view all of the projects that Brett showed in the universe of projects. Through this, they can then leave comments about projects they're concerned about or projects that they are really excited about, as well as leave comments about details about all of these projects. Within this, it also explains what each project type is so that the public knows exactly what they're looking at. The public coordinate site also includes another aspect of the survey in addition to the interactive maps, and this is where we are asking feedback on the prioritization process, as well as kind of all of those different aspects of prioritization that you see up there, including things like street connectivity, congestion, safety, and the other aspects that Allison had touched on. So yeah, we're kind of right in the middle of phase 3, and for our kind of upcoming tasks, we are going to complete this last phase of engagement, and then take all of those results, summarize them, and use them to prioritize our projects, which is kind of the bulk of our evaluation and prioritization process. When that is then complete, we'll bring it all back to you all, as well as the town council, for additional review, and then hopefully draft the plan. I'll turn it back over to Brett.
All right. So now it's time to hear from you, now that you have absorbed all of that information. And we put together a slide for you with topics and potential feedback. These are probably the best questions that we would like to have answered. But feel free to provide whatever input you have that might fall outside of these boundaries or on something else. But yeah, I'll just turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I guess, Sushma, we'll start with you if you've got any comments.
Thank you for the update on CTP plan, and that's very interesting. And so I see the more emphasis on bicycle and pedestrian comfort, safety. But the thing is, maybe I missed that. What I'm thinking is I did not see that much about. How about my question is how are the needs for seniors, people with disabilities, will be addressed?
And so from what perspective are we?
From the perspective of the safety, and when they see the more, I see like a more bicycle lane being added, and then taking care of pedestrian comfort level, right? But for like someone with a disability and the old people, when they walk, try to cross, how that will be addressed.
Right, okay, yes, thank you for that clarification. So one thing to note about, not to get confused about what is happening with bicycle lanes, I think some members of the town council had some of the same confusion on it. If you look at the map here, which you see the existing bicycle lanes are pinkish, and there's not many that exist in the town. And then you see where bike lanes, any new bike lanes that don't exist, where they're proposed, there's not very many facilities that have them. And that's because that we are moving, it is part of the CTP's goal to move away from on-street facilities to off-street facilities and or separated side paths to facilitate bicyclist travel and pedestrian travel. So there's not really much emphasis on bike lanes in the CTP. It's certainly not compared to previous CTPs. The only facilities where we've identified them is Kitts Creek up here, Carrington Mill up here. This one on Morrisville Carpenter actually is just, there's also a side path identified for Morrisville Carpenter. It's just, the idea was, let's give it bike lanes and a side path because it's a busy thoroughfare where bicyclists might be trying to get on and off for a certain amount of time to get to a location along that thoroughfare so that they would have that option. And then down here on Northwest Cary Parkway, and that really just matches up with the town of Cary's bike plan that's currently under development. However, the town of Cary's bike plan, that when I reviewed it, it's not real clear about like what design treatment they are proposing at which location. So I don't know if through their plan, if that meant separated. It was a bike lane, which would not be necessarily a side path, but it may be separated in some way. And we are also looking at doing more separation with bike lanes than just having it right next to or adjacent to a travel lane for motorized vehicles. For persons with disabilities, I don't know how to pry into that any more than, unless there's something specific. There's a law that was passed in the early 90s that we have to comply with. We are, I think the CTP does, what's proposed in the Universal Projects, does move the needle a little bit further toward addressing like how they want to get, how persons with disabilities want to get around and need to get around, and what type of facilities they can navigate and those that they can't. With that, it just depends, because there's so many disabilities, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how to address that without more specifics.
So I mean, it's a thought that a person in a wheelchair could use a side path also? Is that what you're getting at? I mean. Yeah,
absolutely. They have to be able to use the side path. It's illegal not to let them use the side path. Yeah.
Thank you.
Perhaps just to continue that thought, perhaps improving the cross sections with some audio visual artifacts, because not everybody can hear quite well. That might be something to consider, because most of the challenge is going to be in the crosswalks, right, or intersections where you are coming. I mean, in Morrisville we have got many where greenways kind of come through to where you have to cross the road to get to the other side. And when you are going to extend the Airport Boulevard up to Church Street, there are at least 2 intersections where this will come into play. And it's the school zone too, right? So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this thing called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices that we can't really deviate from, and that addresses a lot of that kind of stuff, and treatments at intersections and crossings for persons with disabilities and things like that. A lot of that's just kind of run of the mill, like we have to put that in whenever we make improvements. So I just want to note that. I will say too, on the, if we go back, we are, another thing that would help facilitate travel for persons with disabilities that have mobility impairments and use wheelchairs or other mobility assistance devices is increasing the sidewalk width from 5 feet to 6 feet. That provides more room for people to cross in opposing directions, particularly when somebody is using a mobility assistance device. So I will note that as well. Our current CTP is 5 feet. We want to go to 6.
Chris?
Thank you. Could you go back to slide 15, please?
Sure.
I just have a clarification. So G03 to G04, the proposed greenway, looks like it goes through Preston Country Club along Crabtree Crossing. I think is the intent to use the existing sidewalk, or?
Since I don't have the screen in front of me, I'm trying to, but I see, yeah.
I think there was another attachment document that gave more detail on that, but I just wondered where that would go.
Do you have any details on that? Like the exact path for
So I'm
Geo-
assuming
Geo3?
that the magenta is probably Crabtree Crossing itself, right? Is that?
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I see what you're
that's-
saying. That is kind of over behind those
Houses.
and it also does appear to be on the golf course.
And Will's looking into it. That was in the existing CTP.
I know, I'm sorry.
You
I
can't
live in that
vote.
area, and that was a question. Was the intent to use the existing sidewalk? Otherwise, the houses on the other side go right up to the street, and it's all Preston Golf Course all the way through. And then the other question was that bike path, just for clarification, is also used as a golf cart path? Just so you know that, if you don't know that.
Okay, you mean the bicycle lane?
The bicycle
Yeah,
lane,
yes.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
And we're excited over the intersection, doing some updates. That's well needed, and that whole construction down that road all the way down to the fitness center. Those are all great improvements.
All right. Thank you.
So I guess my question, so I do find it a little bit curious. So you were saying constant feedback of connectivity, road connectivity. We've got it from the council, from the public, everything else. But then we're not building roads because we think people are going to use them. Those two things are at odds with each other. I mean, we've sort of islanded off Providence Place and all the other people on Church Street by allowing that to be closed. And we're doing really, I guess it looks like we're going to just stick our head in the sand and do nothing to help. I'm confused by that. Yeah, thousands of people bought houses on Town Hall Drive while there was a sign down at the end advertising a connection between Town Hall Drive to the toll road. It was there for 10 years. To think that somehow people don't know about that. I mean, maybe people who've moved since then don't, but I mean, that's certainly a thing that was planned at one time, just as the connection on the other end to Crabtree Crossing Parkway was always planned 30 years ago when all of this was built. It was planned. And we can say that we're not gonna do it now, whatever. But we're okay with forcing Providence Place and everyone on Church to drive through Keystone Park, Keystone Crossing subdivision. So we're okay if those people drive on those roads, but we're saying no to driving them on Morrisville roads. It's a hard time following the logic and all that.
Yeah.
Because the car's gonna go somewhere.
I totally understand, and I actually think if the tollway extension concept went away completely, building out full, good connectivity in that area to better connect Providence Place to Davis Drive and all that would be much better accepted. I think it's the fear of what comes when you connect to that controlled access environment, and all these cars are just gonna come in and,
But what cars?
at least that's
I
the
mean,
perception.
The people are gonna drive from that toll road instead of going on Davis Drive and putting traffic on a road that, while it's a big road, is congested every night. Now going by a high school that was planned as a middle school and is now going to have a lot more cars dumping into that, it's gonna make that worse. I mean, why couldn't those people just go straight to their houses on the road that we were talking about? I don't, if we're not gonna ever connect it to Crabtree Crossing on the other end, there's really nowhere for people to go. I guess they could eventually go all the way through a very slow road to Morrisville Carpenter. I'm just having a hard time finding the logic. We're putting our head in the sand again like we did 20 years ago and just hoping things will work. And I think we proved once that that doesn't work. I mean, you know, I don't get why, I mean, I don't get why we're not pursuing that.
You know, one thing that with respect to the connection there, we haven't modeled it. We can model where is that traffic gonna
I
go.
mean, data would be good, yeah, because then we can know what we're talking about. Yeah.
And follow up with that information. When we went to the town council on Tuesday, it was just, you know, I gave the reason and let them, you know.
But at the same time, you said that they also said they wanted connectivity. Well, that's connectivity. I mean, you can't have both.
If I may add to what the chairman is saying, some of us were actually here when that whole connection was debated. And I can tell you, there was pretty, almost 0 to none, low resistance from all the residents who were on this side of the Church Street. All the resistance was about connecting Town Hall Drive to Crabtree Cross, to Morrisville Parkway, right? That was where the issue was. So, and I agree with the chairman that if you look at Morrisville, the great divide in Morrisville is the railway line. Right? We have closed all the crossings, and now anybody who is on this side of the fence needing to go to I-40 has to go through the congested Morrisville, McCrimmon Parkway, right? I can't get to work in the morning without waiting for 20 minutes because the right turn is hosed up. And traffic is already backed up all the way to Davis Drive. So by making the connection, not only are you improving connectivity, you are also making sure, as we are building the town hall center here, there is more, places for people to come through, right? So I don't understand the fear, right? I don't think it is a fear from the residents.
So if I could speak to that for just a moment, I think some of the things that we heard from town council echoed some of what was also heard back in 2018 when the last CTP was under review in terms of just additional traffic in residential areas. But we're here tonight to take your feedback and to take your input. We'd like to hear, from the entire board on what you think, not just on this issue, but other issues. And then we're going to be taking that feedback and carrying it into the next phase of the project.
Yeah, I'll close on this by saying the council is being two-faced on this topic of connectivity. If we are serious about connectivity in this town and it is a priority, then you have to take some bold steps. Otherwise, we can stop doing CPTs going forward and just, put our hands up. Sorry about, venting out here a little bit, but that's the frustration I keep hearing from all the community members that I meet on this side of the fence between Town Hall Drive, between Morrisville Carpenter Road all the way to Kids Creek. We want to build up the cricket ground. We want to do TOD. We want to do town hall or town center. Where are people going to come from? How are they going to, get to those points without getting frustrated? If you don't do connectivity, then don't stop all these projects. Right? Then there is no traffic to flow. Make life easier for everyone.
I will add that there is some interest expressed on the council to see how the public reacts to this through the engagement period now, and also the planning and zoning board. So I didn't sense that there was an absolute foreclosure on it. There was still some interest to see, is there some type of legs behind this that's being expressed by the community? And we will see, coming out of our engagement period this month. I don't want to presuppose, I don't want to stand here and presuppose either that There wouldn't be issues with what's feared. We can model it and we can see. We have really good models that'll tell us using O&D data where people want to go and what part of the network they're going to use. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good at nailing it. We can run that and see and share that information.
Yeah, I think the data would be, even if, at least let's figure out, maybe we find out nobody would use it. Just if we have the data, we would know. And I guess we can move on, but the other thing is, really like to push the intersection improvement thing. This is something that was sort of pitched 6 years ago before COVID, I can't even remember, as something that was relatively quick and somewhat inexpensive that could potentially have an impact on people, and we've got zero to show for it since. I mean, yes, we've got some stuff on Morrisville Carpway, it's in the progress, but like, every day cars are jammed up. I mean, it's just a mess. It's a mess at Morrisville Carpenter now because of the turn lane. People are sitting in, it used to be a turn lane, now it goes through for, and dozens of cars per light cycle that could be turning right on the Davis Drive can't turn right because one car is sitting there that wants to go to Walgreens. Dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of cars every day at Morrisville Parkway, at Davis Drive, at Hatcher's Grove Church, can't turn right because one person stops that's going to go across when it's I've literally almost paid for signs to build up like, hey, everyone, let's think about the larger picture because tomorrow you're going to be behind this. So some sort of turn lane situations there could vastly improve what we're doing for not very much money and take advantage of what we already have, which is a very precious resource. And same thing at anyway, there's just some small things we can do that we just seem like I just could have been pushed a little harder. So anyway, Narky, any questions you got?
I personally live right down the street from that intersection, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It is a common thing that we've said for years. I think that the engagement is so wonderful. I really love the different pop-ups that you guys are doing around the towns. I'd like to go to that screen if you don't mind. I just want to look at that and see you had something going on for Spring Fest. I wanted to find out, this is going to be the last pop-up event that you have for this engagement period, correct?
Spring Fest, yes. Pop up, a go to them event, what we would call a go to them event. There's a come to us event on the 21st.
Okay, and so when you have these pop-up events, how is the surveying and the interaction engagement being compiled? Do you have like someone who is seeking out seniors, seeking out teenagers, seeking out different minority groups? How is the feedback compiled?
So that's a great question. So at the pop-up events, there's not active solicitation other than we're at a table. People who come to the event come to the event. I can be friendly. That might seem hard to believe, but I'm being friendly. Michelle was with me at Farmers Market and hey, good morning. We're doing the CTP update. So we're not targeting any specific groups. It's just whoever's coming by. And at our table, we have different ways that people can provide feedback. We have something that's super easy for people that are like, I just want to spend 30 seconds with you and move on with my life. We have other people who are more interested in digging in. We have other ways that they can do that with stickers and boards. If they want to provide comments on specific projects in our Universa projects, they can do that. We also have a survey QR code that they can use their phone to go straight to the survey and take the survey. Whenever we do a pop-up event, you kind of have to offer that range of because different people are only willing to be engaged to a certain amount, right? So you have to offer that range of activities. Your 30-second activity, your 3-minute activity, some people want 5 or more minutes. So that's kind of how we set it up. Now, on the survey, we're almost halfway, we're about halfway through the survey period. We're collecting demographic data. And what we will do, actually probably within the next couple of days, business days, is look at where is that landing and how representative is it of the community. If it's not, if let's say we are not hitting Asian population as high as we need to, disabled populations, whatever, the whole, it could be any such group, then we will do more targeted outreach for those groups. We ran into that with seniors with the senior community in the past. Although I will say, Morrisville has a pretty small senior community. It's only about 4.5% of the population. But we still want to hit that, and depending on what you're dealing with, you may want to hit it, you might want to go over that amount as what's representative in your sample. So we ran into that with the alternative transit study that we did, because you really need your transit to, seniors are a very important group. So we will look at, okay, where are we landing in terms of how representative it is, and what can we do to specifically target those groups to participate more.
That answers the question. Well, thank you.
Arthur?
Yeah, real quick, so my understanding is that it will not be a bike lane that extends the length of the road. Why is that? So why won't we be able to have bike lanes? Like, I assume that we would have bike lanes that would connect throughout the city, but apparently we won't have those bike lanes.
So if there's not a bike lane, there's a side path.
Okay, so for road cyclists, you can ride your bike on the side path?
Yes.
Okay, that was the only clarification I needed.
So I mean, has there been a change? I mean, I guess for a while, wasn't the focus on trying to put bikes on roads because that was safer intersect? I can't really remember, but
Because right now,
there's been some changes. So has there been a change back towards separating them off into a side path? Is that kind of
Separated bikeways or side paths, yeah.
Okay.
You know, the preference of, yeah, I'm on the Town of Cary's Transportation Working Group. I have heard everything under the sun from bicyclist groups. They can't even agree. You hear from one bicycle group, this is what they want. You hear from another one, they want something different. But the general preference of the public, and though, you know, of the entire community of people, if you ask them if they would ride a bike, including, and you add that to those who do ride a bike, is separated from motorized vehicles as much as possible. Greenways are really the preferred way for them to ride. Then coming off of that, side paths along, you know, within the right of way of a roadway that's separated by a verge and a curb and all that from the travel lanes. And if you can't do that, then a separated bike lane in the roadway, right? And if you can't do that, then at least some bike lane. So that's kind of the logic that we're trying to follow with facilitating bicyclists throughout the town.
because right now we have the bike lane, but it just abruptly stops. So why can't we just have one that continues?
Are you talking about the one on McCrimmon?
Yes.
We're gonna fill that one in.
Okay.
Yeah. That's gonna be part of the McCrimmon widening project, the town, and the town's actually paying for that. DOT's not paying for that, but yeah, will be, that stretch between Perimeter Park and Airport Boulevard, we're adding a bike lane there.
Okay, got it.
We're even making, we're even making the inside travel lane, I think it's the inside, or one of the travel lanes, we're even narrowing to 10 feet
Love it.
to get the bike lane in there.
Anything else?
Couple of things, right? One was, you mentioned a couple of times, narrowing the lanes. The trend in the US is all about big, big, big. So would we increase the safety risk by narrowing down from 12 feet to 11 feet, given that most of now, the Ford trucks, or even for that matter, construction trucks or anybody else coming in, are they going to kind of almost be in the other lane?
So we have heard a lot from town council on design speed and some displeasure with the design speeds that have been designed for new location thoroughfares, AKA Airport Boulevard Extension Phase 1, or just in general. And when we narrow lanes mean you can reduce the design speed. It means lower design speed. Wider lanes mean higher design speed. So this is an attempt really to kind of do that. One of the things that you will find for larger vehicles like tractor trailer trucks, box trucks, that sort of thing. They do have a hard time negotiating 10-foot lanes. And sometimes they have a hard time negotiating 11-foot lanes. But, you know, is that, is that what we're planning for? You know, that's a good question.
Yeah, it should not be at the risk of creating traffic bottlenecks, one. Second, number one should really be about safety. That if, given the amount of traffic we get, and all kinds of ones, right, do I want to, but I don't know enough, so you have to tell us whether reducing that by that 1 feet does really impact safety. If not, okay, but then also take into account, if a truck is in there, it's going to, you know, hose up the traffic, right? So that's something to keep considered.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on additional context.
Sure,
And
yeah.
additional roadway characteristics, but that's the idea. I'm just,
Okay.
you know.
Okay. The other suggestion is, again, thinking about connectivity. From right now, for anybody on this side of the Great Divide going to the other side of the Great Divide, have to go through all of the, McCrimmon Parkway and others, and it is not pedestrian friendly to get to the other side. A suggestion would be at the intersection of Wake Tech College and on the other side, Shiloh Church. Can we get a tunnel? I'm just talking about bikes or pedestrians and bike crossing, right, which is underneath there. Right? That way, at least people who are on this side don't have to go through McCrimmon, they can go underneath the tunnel and cross over. Right? That would be really beneficial for a lot of people who want to cross over. Right? Especially again, when the middle school is going to come there, that will be even more convenient from that point of view.
Yeah, we have that project on here.
Oh,
We agree.
okay, yeah.
Now, I don't know if it'll bore under.
Doesn't matter, right?
But it will have to be grade separated. There's no way in the world North Carolina Railroad is going to let us do anything at grade over that railroad. So it'd probably be a bridge.
Yeah. The other thing, again, right, I think Allison wanted feedback on prioritization and those kinds of things. Perhaps using opportunity cost will be something to consider. Right? Given that most of these projects are getting delayed year over year over year. Right? If you don't do it, what's the opportunity cost? Right? What are we losing in terms of revenue, in terms of taxation, in terms of growth? All of that might be very helpful to consider in your. That's again cost benefit analysis, but it doesn't take into account what is the opportunity lost.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we can quantify it, something to consider.
But that's part of our job to plan for it, right? Okay, if we don't do it in the plan 2 years, what is going to be the loss of revenue to the not only to the town, but it also feeds into the county and overall North Carolina state.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And another thing, something that we have asked many times is, how can we do incremental builds in some of these projects? Rather than trying to do these big bang projects that take forever, how can we do incremental growth? To that point, could we stop taking in lieu of provision that we keep on doing every time there is some some rezoning application comes into play, or somebody wants to build in a townhome community, they are more than happy to give the town the money rather than spend on doing the incremental work. So if we don't take that incremental money in lieu of and waiting for some of these big projects to come along, we are probably getting some interest, but does that really cover the ultimate cost we are going to incur for doing those projects?
Yeah, just to respond to that, I'm the person at the town that determines pay in lieu or put it in. But our ordinance requires, actually, if there's a funded project, that they pay in lieu. We don't really have a choice. The ordinance says that. But the reason for that, I think it's a good reason. If somebody puts something in and then 2 or 3 years later, everything's gonna be torn up, and they may not put it in exactly where the design is going to land. Some of these projects, that will take Aviation Parkway, for instance. It's at maybe between 20 and 30%, maybe, I think it's at 30% design, because they've done NEPA. There's a whole lot of design left to go, and where they think things are gonna go, it's gonna change. And so if we ask somebody to put a sidewalk or in full build out of the cross-section now, it's likely gonna have to be torn out, starting in 2029, 2030. And so that's a game I don't know that we wanna play. And it's just, the town also, with NCDOT projects, has a lot of things that they can do to augment these projects that would be the responsibility of the town to pay for. If we want to widen a sidewalk to a certain width, if we want to do landscaping in the medians beyond the 1% that DOT allocates for it, we have to pay for it, and payment in lieu allows us to do that. It's a big part of the financial equation for that to be able to happen. Now, projects that are further along that have, NC 54, McCrimmon Parkway, they are about to 100% design. It's probably possible. But I don't know that DOT would honor or issue an encroachment permit, or would accept it. So there's that as well. Like, what are you doing in our right of way that we're getting ready to go in and do all this stuff, that sort of thing.
I just find it fascinating, to say nicely, that what I'm talking about is engineering 101. That yes, when we talk about large projects, yes, I agree. If your design is in 20% or 30% time frame, we probably are not ready. But if your design is close to 80% and 100%, you do know that we can put in we can connect, let's just say, from Western Parkway up to 54 and or up to Morrisville Carpenter Road and ease up that traffic, right? In the evening, it just backs up, right? So why would we not? I mean, yes, it is our job to go and convince NCDOT that it is important and it is going to give us benefit for the town and for them. They are paying probably a fraction to do it now versus doing it 10 years later.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, the other issue, so certainly with your logic, definitely see a benefit to that if it's a long frontage.
Yeah.
But a lot of our development is very piecemeal on a lot here, a lot there. The other big factor in being able to do it is utility relocation, and whether or not Duke Energy is even going to work with the developer to do it. Duke Energy doesn't have to do it. No, we're not going to move the utilities for you to do that. DOT is getting ready to have us come out and do it for this project in 2 or 3 years. So we're not doing it. And if Duke Energy is not going to move the utilities, it ain't happening. So that's another issue. If the town controlled everything, it might be different, but we don't.
I mean, I think we're not going to solve that part of it. Any other comments for this? All right, so we appreciate the chance for feedback.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank you.
letting us speak.
No, I love it. You all are great.
We can,
Very happy to take this feedback, and we'll see you again in June. So,
we can do the shuffle and go on to 6B or 6A. 6A, sorry. So this has a public comment. I don't know if anyone's here to make a public comment. Where would you prefer that we did that?
We could take general public comment now if you would prefer.
I mean, yeah.
I think we have one member of the public here. Were you here for general public comment or to speak on a particular item?
Is there anyone else here that has any general public comment? All right. Then, thank you. All right. Go ahead.
On the floor? Oh, great. All right. Good evening, Chairman Langston, Planning and Zoning Board. Josh Michael, Planner 3. Today, we're going to be looking at the consideration of items to amend the zoning map for 10212 Chapel Hill Road to the conditional town center commercial zoning district. I also do have the applicant team here with us today. We have Tim Morgan from Evergreen Construction over here and Patrick Barbeau from Tim's Group. We don't have a presentation from the applicant team, but of course they can answer questions at the conclusion. Okay. So the applicant request is to amend the zoning map from town center commercial to conditional town center commercial. The applicant owner is MK Property Holding LLC. The current land use is vacant, and the proposed use is affordable housing for age-restricted individuals 55 and older, and it is approximately 3.24 acres. Just some more general property information, kind of going over what I already said. It is inside the corporate limits. Some background on the surrounding area. It's mainly neighborhoods that surround this property. You have to the north neighborhood preservation, single family homes, of course that used car dealership. To the east, residential neighborhood preservation, single family homes again. To the south, more residential town center commercial and residential transition. There's an empty building, which used to be, I believe, a restaurant, and single family homes. And then, of course, to the west is Fidelity Bank. The future land use map designates this property as general commercial. And the project profile. So the applicant proposes to develop a 60-unit affordable rental multifamily community utilizing low-income housing tax credit, or LIHTC. Financing. All units will be reserved for households earning at or below 60% of area median income, or AMI, and will be age restricted to individuals 55 and older. The rezoning request is necessary to allow the project to qualify for the town's affordable housing incentive policy, which is currently only available through rezoning process. So that's why we're rezoning from town center commercial to town center commercial. The town established this policy goal of expanding affordable housing and mixed income housing opportunities by offering regulatory flexibility and other incentives. And the town's stated objective is to encourage development partners to bring projects that help advance these goals. This project would be a first for Morrisville. We currently don't have any LIHTC supported senior affordable communities in Morrisville. The development team, Evergreen Construction, has completed numerous projects just like this in the Triangle and Wake County. So again, the reason we're doing a rezoning is the only way to take advantage of the affordable housing incentive policy is through a rezoning currently. TCC does allow multifamily by right, so they could go ahead and build multifamily there. But with the affordable, if I can focus on this little area right here, which I can't see with my readers, I can't read it. But essentially what it says, if somebody's offering 100% affordable, then we should make some concessions. Some of those concessions are reduced parking, height increase, so things like that. So, and that's what they're actually asking for in their conditions that I'll get to in just a moment. Here's the preliminary site plan for you to look at. 60 units proposed, 30 units would be just one bedroom, 30 units would be 2 bedroom. And so for the conditions, parking shall be provided at a minimum ratio of 1:1, 1.1 space per dwelling unit. A minimum of 68 parking spaces shall be provided, which is essentially a 10% reduction. EV parking requirements, including the minimum percentage of EV spaces and the standards outlined in Table 5.10.3 F2 of the UDO shall not apply to this project. Staff and the applicant feel that this is cost prohibitive for LIHTC. No EV designated spaces, EV ready spaces, or EV charging infrastructure were required or will be installed. The height for any building on the property shall not exceed 3 stories and 45 feet, measured in accordance with the town of Morrisville standards. Currently in TCC, the limit is 35 feet. The building will be constructed to Energy Star multifamily new construction version 1.2 standards and certified as such by a third-party firm. Site shall be in general conformance with the application. And the development will commit to serving households at or below 60% AMI, meet the definition of serving only elderly households as defined by the federal 55-year age definition, and for a 50-year affordability period. So, staff recommends approval of the requested zoning map amendment from Town Center Commercial to conditional Town Center Commercial for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning supports objectives and goals outlined in the town's adopted strategic plan, land use plan, and affordable housing plan. The proposed rezoning aligns with the strategic plan initiative to identify and expand housing options to meet current and future needs of the community. The proposed rezoning creates housing in Morrisville that would preserve and enhance the diversity, quality, character, safety, affordability, and appeal of Morrisville's housing and neighborhoods to strengthen the town's desirability as a great place to live as recommended by the land use plan. And finally, the proposed rezoning adheres to the goal of encouraging development of affordable housing guided by the Affordable Housing Plan, which states the town should seek to develop a balance of housing that provides a diverse range of housing types, price points, and styles. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and like I said, the applicant team is here as well to answer any questions if you have site-specific questions or things like that.
Okay, thank you. Sanjay, I'm going to go to comments. Do you have any comments?
No comments at this point.
Arthur?
Yeah, how have past evergreen projects performed?
Tim, would you like to come?
Good evening, Tim Morgan with Evergreen Construction. Can you specify what you mean when you say how do they perform? If you're referring to how do they stay leased up?
Yeah.
Overall, we have 41 properties in our portfolio, which is just under 2,000 units. Our overall portfolio is 96% occupancy year to date. These senior communities, we just opened one up off of Buck Jones Road in Raleigh, but it's very close to the Cary border. We got temporary COs 10/29 of last year. We were 100% in January, so they lease up fast.
And what about the risk? How about risk? Any risk associated with this project?
Well, I have lots of risk associated with the project. Yeah, I've got investors that have to meet their timelines and schedules, and if not, there's, financial penalties for that. But, overall, we've done this several times in communities across Wake County, and so hopefully we'll be able to do so in Morrisville. We'd be excited to be here. And, we've been around since 1978. We're local. We're here in Raleigh. We only develop in North Carolina, but we develop, we build, and we manage it, so we're married to it for the long haul.
Darky?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Is this something akin to, is it Willow Creek or whatever that's over by the edge of Cary? It's in Cary. Is that in Morrisville or Cary? That right by the park, but facing on Davis Drive. I don't know, there's a little small complex there right beside Hatcher Grove Church and between the Greenway. I just didn't know if it was kind of that same, but I believe that was also an income limited senior type apartment of that.
I don't know. Where is that lead again?
It's called Willow Creek, I think. It's right beside Hatcher Grove Baptist Church, along Davis Drive, between the church and the
Is that a
Greenway.
Cary address, or?
I believe it might have a Cary address.
Then it might be a community that DHIC, which is a nonprofit based in Raleigh, that they may have
I was
developed.
just curious. Yeah.
Yes. In Cary, we have one called Weatherstone Spring, which is 72 units, and another one in Cary called Ryan Spring, that's 42 units, excuse me.
Chris?
Just to clarify on the zoning, so currently the maximum height would be 35 foot, and this zoning would make it possible for 3 stories?
That's correct.
Why does it need to be so large? Why do you need a 2-bedroom for a low-income senior? Why would, my question is, why couldn't it be 1 or 2 stories? Why are you using that space for 2 bedrooms?
The three-story design that we have actually meets the height requirement that the town has right now as it's measured, which is 35 feet. So the 45 feet that we have in here, that is measured to the top of the cupola, which is not how roof height in Morrisville is measured. We need the flexibility of going to 3 stories to be able to get the units on there. And so we do half 1 and half 2 because there's a large demand for 2-bedroom units because people just have a lot of stuff. And when they're downsizing, the 2 bedrooms typically go first.
What price point would this be?
We'll have a range of units, some set aside at 30% AMI, some at 40%, some at 50%, and some at 60%. And that's rent-wise, it's anywhere from roughly $450 up to, I think, $1,100. And each income bracket set aside will have 1s and 2s available for those residents.
So if the people downsize their materials, their low-income housing, and this seems to be a great deal with brand-new housing. I live in a 20-year-old condo. If they downsized and those were all 1-bedroom units, these are low-income, 1, 2 people, there are no families in these. We don't have schooling for people. You would be able to go 2 stories high?
Again, to get the layout like it needs to be, we need to go 3 stories. And I can't, let me just, a typical resident profile for our senior population is someone that's 67 years of age, single, female, with about $25,000 in annual income, and about 75% of them have a car.
So they don't need a 2-bedroom, and that's kind of my point.
They like 2 bedrooms, so we offer 2 bedrooms.
It's low-income housing. Okay, my other question is,
That's
on
the
the
correct
previous
statement.
presentation, there was a point, there was about 4% seniors. Morrisville's maybe 10 square miles. Of those 4% seniors, what percentage of those fall into low income? How many is that? And for you to get a 90%, 96% occupancy, are you pulling in people from Raleigh, or is this being designed for local residents?
It's going to be both. But the market will also be outside of Morrisville.
Okay, thank you.
So Shelley?
No, I don't have any question. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Josh, could you go back to that picture you had? Right there. Go
The
one
plan?
The affordable housing incentive policy?
No, the diagram, yeah. So does this plan take into account the future expansion of 54?
Yes, they have the right-of-way dedication there allocated appropriately.
Okay, so, given the orientation, wouldn't these homes along 54 now have all the sound problems and, because 54 is a heavily used throughway? So I know we want to have the facing towards the street, but given that these are residential properties, is that the best orientation we should have? Or should you twist it around so that, the homes are at least set further back?
I think, and the applicant is free to speak on this, as we went through the pre-submittal, I think some of the reasoning for that was to not have an entryway off of 54, which our fire department did say was certainly feasible for this project, and to instead have it off Sunset and Fairview to stop some of those traffic issues that might be presented with reformatting the building in that direction. So the applicant is certainly can speak on that as well. But I think that was some of the reasoning. I certainly understand, you always want sound mitigation for roads. And we have those in the UDO, we have those requirements for the airport overlay. There are no requirements for that in this particular section of town.
Okay.
I mean, there is residential on the other side of Fairview right now.
There
This would
is.
sort of keep that away from them, so I could see how that might kind of be benefit to those current,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, yeah, that's it, thank you.
Any other comments or anyone?
I have one more.
Okay.
Did you review this with our medical services as far as EMS? There's always a higher number of incidents when they service our elderly, throughout our entire community, the entire firehouse has to leave and they're taken off of other duties. What would be the impact of 70 additional people in that age range to EMS?
We have not reached out to EMS we're in just the rezoning. We're not in the site development stage yet. Through the pre-submittal of the rezoning, as I mentioned, the fire marshal was involved in that rezoning. There were no comments made expressly about that, but that is certainly something that as we go through the site development that we could look into as well. But so far, there's been no research into that at all.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Do we have anyone be willing to make a motion? Do we feel like we would be willing to approve or disapprove?
I would personally, I feel that we've turned down other developments for mixed use, and our goals have been around mixed use properties, not additional high density. We've had individual homes. We recently had put high demands on Park West Town Center to get the right amount of low-income housing. So I'm guessing why we continue to add at this rate. So I would not support.
I mean, on the other hand, though, we have had a goal in town of increasing affordable housing. I mean, they seem like they are actually doing affordable housing if they're going all the way down to 30%, which I was,
Yeah,
we've had other projects come in that were affordable, but yet they were only just slightly affordable compared. So, I mean, this is, on that aspect, somewhat meritorious, I think.
But they're coming from Raleigh, and that Morrisville is a very small town that's going to
People
put a
moving to
huge,
Morrisville from everywhere. I mean,
huge
that's-
impact onto our services. I know I live in high density. They show up all the time. Every time they fall, they're in the bathroom. They call EMS to come and stand them up, and then they don't want to take the ride to the hospital. I mean, it's a constant cycle. So it's a lot of people to come into the town. And it's zoning. I think 2 stories, 1 story would have been fine, some incremental housing, but to go 3 stories and then in 50 years, turn that into something completely different, great investment for them, probably not for the city.
Narky, do you have any?
I'm really happy to know that we're doing something for low-income inhabitants and those who are older. I'm grateful for that. And this is the first time too, so it's a plus. It's a step in the right direction. Something that our mayor and others have said that they wanted to see. So I'm happy to see it.
Yeah. So I guess, I'll entertain a motion if someone wants to approve or recommend approval. We would need to obviously read all of that out. And then we could vote. I feel like generally the consensus is probably enough to go forward with that, but if anyone else disagrees. So if someone was be willing to make the motion, then we could move forward.
I find the proposed zoning amendment to be consistent with the town of Morrisville's comprehensive plan and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning supports objectives and goals outlined in the town's adopted strategic plan, land use plan, and affordable housing plan. The proposed rezoning aligns with the strategic plan initiative to identify and expand housing options to meet current and future needs of the community. The proposed rezoning creates housing in Morrisville that would preserve and enhance the diversity, quality, character, safety, affordability, and appeal of Morrisville's housing and neighborhoods to strengthen the town's desirability as a great place to live. as recommended by the Land Use Plan. The proposed rezoning adheres to the goal of encouraging development of affordable housing guided by the Affordable Housing Plan, which states the town should seek to develop a balance of housing that provides a diverse range of housing types, price points, and styles. And I hereby make a motion to recommend approval of ordinance 2026-139-0 of the Morrisville Town Council approving a zoning map amendment for 10212 Chapel Hill Road, a property located north of the intersection of Chapel Hill Road and Sunset Avenue, to the conditional town center commercial zoning district res 260020.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
So we have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then all opposed? Did you get the tally? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we can move on to staff comments and the planning newsletter.
Okay. Some updates from this past March. So the town did accept 2 new development applications, one for the rezoning that you just considered, and the other, a site plan application for Novartis Building 4. That was the rezoning that you reviewed at your last meeting. So that is under review as well. In terms of administrative approvals, and again, those are approvals that were reviewed solely at the staff level. We did approve a site and construction plan for a 22-space EV parking lot at 1200 Perimeter Park. That's right next to the 7-Eleven up in that area. And also approved a site plan for 1016 WCC Lane to construct 2 retail buildings and a restaurant. So that's in the weight competition area there off of McCrimmon. In other news, work is just about to begin on the Airport Boulevard Phase 1 construction. You may have seen some of the road work signs are up. We were expecting to start to see trees coming down this week. I don't know that that has started yet, but you're going to begin to start seeing some real construction activity there very soon. In public engagement on the comprehensive transportation plan, I think that was gone over pretty well with your last presentation. And then lastly, the town did launch the rental assistance program that launched on March 30th, so that's exciting. And that's all I have.
Thank you. We can move on to board comments. Sujama? Chris?
No comments.
Narky? Any? Arthur?
None for me.
All good.
Well, thank you for the presentation and the plan. Everyone else has already left yet for the transportation plan, but if you're listening, thank you for that as well. So, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you.